help women, save lives, and peacefully end abortion where you live.
I can tell you exactly what would happen. The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired.
You were serious about that?
Be inspired to change hearts and minds by joining over 1 million volunteers taking part in the global movement happening in your neighborhood.
She says, pray that I can get through this abortion. And I said, oh, no. So she went ahead and went into the abortion clinic. And she just came out. She told us, I'm not going to get the abortion. We just had a baby saved. We had a baby saved in Memphis today. Praise the Lord.
This is the 40 Days for Life podcast with your host, Sean Carney.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today on the 40 Days for Life podcast. I am Sean Carney, the president of 40 Days for Life, and your host for this podcast, which is dedicated to helping you end abortion where you live. Happy October. We are finally in October, which means nothing to me whatsoever because it's still 95 degrees at my house. So, but I'm sure all of you are having a wonderful, beautiful fall where everything is not dead yet. So fall brings about the beauty of death. But the problem is everything's been dead in Texas since June 1st. So hopefully some of you are enjoying some crisp weather on my behalf. Today we have a very important topic. Speaking of ending abortion, and if you're a week behind and you haven't signed up for your vigil, we're not going to say shame on you. We're going to share the link. Go to 40daysforlife.com and just sign up for wherever you live. We have a record 681 cities. The myth and the propaganda that the pro-life movement was shrinking post-Roe continues to be refuted. And we see that firsthand at 40 Days for Life with a record 681 cities. I said that recently in an interview, and one of the leaders commented and said, yes, we are having record signups this fall, record volunteers coming to the sidewalk. I was like, that's awesome. That's good affirmation. So good encouragement as well. So today we're going to talk about prayer. And there's a lot of people that they go out to the sidewalk, or they can't physically, so they pray at home. And they wonder what to pray for, like actual intentions, and what we need prayers for as 40 Days for Life. And today we're going to share those, what to actually pray for. It gives us focus, it gives us good intention, and it gets us out of our own head. One of the beautiful things about prayer, not only does it sustain us and we're dependent on it, because if we're not in a relationship with God that's improving, then we're dying. And any relationship requires communication. So prayer is required to live. And sometimes we get distracted. And so today we will give you 10 things to pray for during a 40 Days for Life campaign. And somebody who is just a master of prayer and all things supernatural in growing closer to God is Mr. Steve Carlin, who joins us from Madison, Wisconsin. Steve, happy October.
Hey, happy October, Sean. These introductions you give for me get better every week.
You know what? I had a conversion. And if you go back, I used to insult you when I introduced you on the podcast, and it was fun. And then, of course, if we'd have Matt on, or they would all join in on it. The only person who wouldn't was, of course, the late, great Sue Thayer, God rest her soul, because she just had no disdain or sarcasm in her. She's a beautiful, pure soul. I, however, am not. And so I've always kind of insulted you. And then if you notice, I just switched it. And I just started revealing the truth and the goodness of Steve Carlin.
Yeah, I'd like to think that's true. There's a cynical part of me that wonders maybe this is not all that it appears.
Oh, it's not authentic. I never
the
thought
master
of
all things supernatural.
You're telling me that's not true? Oh, man. Okay, we need to do a little bit of follow-up because we bantered in September about October and the playoffs.
Yes.
So we are recording this in Major League Baseball. We're recording this podcast, and the season is still ending. which is really bad for the Astros because they actually may miss the playoffs. I don't know when this comes out. I almost wore my Astros shirt. I couldn't find it. So, because this may be the end. The Astros may be finished, or they may have gotten in the playoffs. And so that's why we're not commenting. And we know the Brewers are in.
They're in,
they
baby.
already clinched. They're in. So the Brewers are in. And congratulations. It's very exciting. I really hope the Astros make it. We've been spoiled, and I understand we've been spoiled with all these trips to the World Series and winning it twice and going to the ALCS every year and just all these great things. And if they go from that, they won the World Series last year. I mean, they were monsters last year. They go from that to missing the playoffs because they lost to the freaking A's and the Royals, who are terrible. Like, that's who they're losing to at the end of the season. So, anyways, I don't mean to go on that, but I'm glad the Brewers are in. I'll definitely be rooting for them if the Astros don't make it, or I'll root for the Rangers. But this was a big mystery right now of whether we're going to the playoffs or not. So that's why we're not commenting on it. We will comment on it once the season ends and we get into it. So for those of you who are dying to hear Steve and I's commentary on sports that is irrelevant to the mission of 40 Days for Life, we'll have plenty for you in October. So Steve, I wanted to ask you too, congratulations. You have some kind of distant relative that got to pitch for the Brewers.
With complete self-awareness, I say I recognize this is a pretty distant relationship, but my brother's wife's cousin, he's the first guy from my high school to go to the pros in 20 years, I think. So he got called up here at the end of the season. The Brewers clinched early, and they got some of the all-stars a little bit of rest, and a great opportunity for my brother's wife's cousin to get a start in the majors. Good deal for him, and exciting for all of the community.
No, that's cool. That's totally cool. And anytime any family member does something like in Major League Sports, it's just awesome. My brother got drafted by Tampa Bay years ago, and then I know you saw him pitch. Mary Lisa's cousin, Tyler, played for the Cardinals for 10 years or so. And then,
well, I told you, I think your response was, he's back in the major leagues. I guess I got kicked off the family email list.
Yes, I think that was it. They kicked me off. I don't know why. Ridiculous. But yeah, because he was up for a while, then he got sent down, and then you were seeing him pitch, and I was like, I guess he got called up again this year. So and then he played for the Yankees. He retired a couple years ago, but played for the Yankees and got to pitch in the ALCS against the Astros. Big lefty. They brought him in, and he struck out Alvarez and Correa back to back. It was pretty awesome.
So you were surely rooting against your own hometown Astros then, correct?
Yeah, that moment, and the kids didn't understand, the little kids, and so I stood up and made an announcement for this section of the game. We're going for Tyler because we're related to him. And it was in Yankee Stadium. It was cold, like the full October thing, ALCS. It was super cool. And of course, the Astros pounded the Yankees in that series. But I'll tell you what was funny, because you talk about, this is Mary Lisa's cousin, but we know them, and it's a close, both sides of our family are very close. It was so funny. There's kind of an unspoken rule. You don't text his parents, right, when he's on national TV, because they're focused in and I'm sure worried. It's amazing, Steve, when they started showing him warming up in the bullpen, I got so nervous for him.
Yeah.
And he wasn't. He was a stud and ran out and, struck out, did exactly what they wanted him to, which is get him out of the inning. And it's just funny seeing somebody on national TV about to do a sports thing. It's actually, I mean, these people that have professional athletes as kids, and everybody's like, they're making millions of dollars, and I understand all that. But if it's your kid, it doesn't matter if he's making a bunch of money or not. You're just nervous for them. And I was nervous for Mary Lisa's cousin.
Yeah, there's nothing you can do in that moment. You're just there watching, hoping for the best, knowing that they want it and you want it and everybody wants it. And you've got no control over it. It's a wild thing. It's not unlike watching your own kids play in youth sports. You're just sitting there on the sidelines. I've always been on the sidelines, Sean, because I'm not very good at sports.
I don't believe that either. But this is why of course, there's corruption in sports and all this, so people go off. But I still think overall, considering our whacked out culture, sports is still a very pure form of entertainment. And unlike a movie, which you can just decide, I'm going to make this trashy, I'm going to corrupt kids, I'm going to do whatever. But the actors and actresses know when they commit to doing a movie what they're in for. And athletes don't. And there's an objective reality at the end. You win, you lose, you get injured, you get cut, you get traded. I like that it's not real life, it's sports, but it has real consequences. And there's an actual winner and an actual loser. And, nobody can just identify Steve as the winner after they lose the Super Bowl. So it's that's why I like it. I love sports as a form of entertainment, and it's great. There's always good lessons to teach kids. There's a million horrible lessons also, because athletes are constantly doing or saying stupid things, but not all of them. So it is indeed nerve-wracking. Like if your son's an actor and he's in a movie, he kind of knows if the movie's good or not, or if he did good in the movie by the time it comes out. But you're pitching in the World Series or you're playing tennis or golf on national TV, you're just subject to humiliation. So
there's no Jill that can go in and edit out the parts that we don't want the public to see.
And people probably wonder how we have never humiliated ourselves on this podcast.
Ever. We've never debased ourselves.
Never said a false word, an inaccurate stat. It's quite impressive. I'm going to say, Steve, you and I are quite impressive. So with that, we will move into prayer. Speaking of prayer, man, we have sold a ton of the new 40 Days for Life devotionals. So thank you for your support. Everybody kept telling us, why don't you have like a physical, short daily devotional that we can follow along for 40 days or use anytime. You use it during Lent. You can use it any time of year. But it is a beautiful devotional. I got to encourage everybody to get one of those. We are selling the last, it was like hundreds per day, Steve. I mean, these are, is like when What to Say When came out and they just like, the book took off. So get the devotional. It is as cheap as we could possibly get it because we want as many people praying. It is $11, I believe, on the store, $11.95. But what's happening, Steve, is people are taking advantage of the bulk pricing. The bulk pricing goes down as low as $5 a book. So it's significant. It's not like, hey, buy, 20 copies and we'll give you 50 cents off. It's a legitimate discount. And so go to 40 Days for Life gear, go to the store and get your copy of the devotional and start praying. And it is so well written. It's an anonymous author, and they did a phenomenal job. It is a beautiful, beautiful tool. So go get your devotional. Okay. On season 5, episode 36, we shared 6 ways to pray during the 40 Days for Life shift when you're out at the vigil. So now we will give you intentions to pray for. And Steve, number 1 is something I think people thought about a lot because it all came, the news broke. We covered it on the podcast. They got frustrated, and then they got so frustrated they didn't even want to think about it anymore.
Yes, we want to pray that abortions are kept out of our pharmacies. As everybody remembers, back at the beginning of the year, Walgreens, CVS, and bankrupt Rite Aid Pharmacy all agreed that they were going to take advantage of the new FDA authorization where they could distribute abortion pills right alongside the candy bars and the birthday cards. And we haven't heard much about that since then because there's a certification process. I believe that is still underway. I've done some homework on it, and I don't believe that those abortion pills are being distributed yet, but we need to pray that it remains that way because the plan is for at least those pharmacies to begin distributing abortion pills. And we know also that prayer and the public witness component of it can be a deterrent to the management of these corporations. And we saw that when Walgreens bailed on distributing the abortion pills in 20 states. 30 more to go, but 20 states is a good start. So we've got 15 different campaigns right now that are dedicated to prayer in front of pharmacies. We've got also, interestingly enough, a handful of campaigns, Baltimore, Maryland, and a couple of other places, Cherry Hill, New Jersey, where there is one of these pharmacies right next to or across the street from the abortion facility. And so it's sort of a vigil covering both the mainstream abortion facility and the pharmacy. But wherever you're praying, Planned Parenthood, somewhere international, non-Planned Parenthood abortion chain, public square, wherever it is that you're praying, we need to keep this intention in prayer, because this is going to be a battleground on the abortion front. And it would be a big victory for the abortion industry to sort of mainstream abortions by bringing them into pharmacies. If we can help stop that, limit it, curtail it, make it controversial, that's going to be a big step toward protecting unborn children.
Yeah, it's in a perfect abortion world, like if the devil got his way, I guess we could put it like that, this would just be, they'd get them certified. Women wouldn't care, which is one of our theories. If you go back and listen to those Walgreens podcasts and pharmacy podcasts, I don't think women will actually, they want to do this. I don't think they want to go through the drive-thru. I think they want to do brick and mortar. And we're seeing that at the campaigns. But if this becomes widespread and common in 10 years, where it's just like, you just go to these pharmacies and they're everywhere, that is so horrible. So it is a great prayer intention, is to pray that they stay out of the pharmacies. A political election would definitely help prevent that in 2024. But it's good that it appears the certification, whatever that means, the FDA, this was illegal, 2 years ago or a year ago. It appears that is taking a while, and that's a good sign. Okay, number 2. This is a prayer podcast, so we're going to be serious about it, but it goes without saying. We need to pray for our public officials. And this is not the condescending, pray for the evil Democrats. It's, which we do need to pray for the evil Democrats, and we need to pray for the evil Republicans. But there's also since we're in the United States, and our Canadian friends are always telling us how spoiled we are because we have a major party that has a pro-life platform, which I guess is good to be told that you're spoiled by the Canadians, because all we do is kind of complain about politics, but I guess we should count our blessings to some degree. However, many of those Republicans have no idea how to address the overturning of Roe or abortion in general, when the other side has lost their freaking minds and are pounding on the table for infanticide, and the Republicans are walking around like, oh, abortion doesn't come up, and it's like, no, it's a winner. Which, by the way, if you saw the debate last week, Steve, DeSantis is ripping off some of our stuff. He said that pro-life was a winner.
Yeah, and he would know, right?
He would know. He won, and he used that.
Firsthand.
He used that. I did get information that they got that from us, but that his campaign got that from us, because we said if you owned it, you won big. DeSantis, Kemp, and Abbott in Texas. We use those 3 examples. There were more for 2022, and he used that because he said, they were like, well, isn't it a political loser? Not in Florida. I won by 22% or whatever it was. It was really great that pro-life is a winner. So anyways, pray for public officials. We need them to have a backbone. We did a whole podcast on Trump's stupid comments. Thank you for all the feedback we got. We really thought we'd get drugged through the street and crucified by the Trump cult people, because you just can't say anything negative about him. He's just, there's nothing wrong with him, and you're a hater. But we didn't get a lot of that. We got some people saying we didn't criticize him enough, but we got great comments from that. So we break down Trump's comments, why they're good, why they're bad. Not good, Steve. He usually backtracks, as most politicians do. And Trump has backtracked before in post-Roe, when he said all the pro-lifers, they just went away. No one knows where they went. They got what they wanted. They got Roe. Roe is gone because of me, and then they just left. They just gone. And then like a day later, he corrected that. These are the best people in the world. They're great looking people. They're wonderful people. So he did not backtrack on this when he criticized the heartbeat bill and said that what DeSantis did in Florida, he thought it was a terrible thing. So we cover that on that podcast. But we need to pray for our public officials. We really do. And don't let the cynicism of how everybody's just kind of done with politics, don't let that hinder you from praying for them. Okay. The next thing to pray for, again, a very serious topic, free speech.
Yes, that is so critical right now. And we've seen it work before, right? Because Mark Houck, the trial earlier this year, the whole world united in Mark Houck, 40 Days for Life volunteer, home raided by the FBI, facing 11 years in prison. And the Christian world, the pro-life world, united in prayer for him. He was getting prayers from the Vatican. He was getting, I think the Mother Teresa nuns were praying for him. Just everyone in the world was praying for him. And he won. And that's a big thing, because as we've said before, it's not a 50-50 matter when you're facing federal charges. The conviction rate is like 99%. You almost always go to prison if you're facing federal charges that are going to put you in prison. So that was a big victory where the Lord came through in a powerful way. And Mark continues to share his story. It has given him a platform to expose the horrors of abortion and the corruption of the Department of Justice. But it's not the last case. We're still fighting the buffer zone case in New York, in Westchester County, New York. And there are just a variety of cases. There are so many different ways that, not the good ones, but there's plenty of bad ones at the FBI and the DOJ, and even at the state and local levels, who are looking to shut down free speech. Sometimes it's because they're lazy and they just don't want to deal with people on the sidewalk. Sometimes it is a much more nefarious agenda. But we say free speech, use it or lose it. We also have to pray for it, because if we don't have the Lord on our side, how are we going to go up against the most powerful people in our country?
Yeah, and they want to take our pro-lifers' free speech away, which is why we have the Institute of Law and Justice, and why we've represented Mark, and why we have to get into the legal part. What I've realized as a pro-life activist, starting off in my 20s, very naive, having a local organization, is that I took the lack of government interference for granted. And the not needing lawyers was a luxury. And I was just like, no, nobody, I'll never need a lawyer for anything. That's just like this
is America, isn't it?
Yeah, you have they're on TV. Like, I'm not OJ. I didn't kill my wife, so I'll never need a lawyer. And then, now we have all these attorneys, and it's great. And we have them not so we can just, have them, but they're needed. They're needed. And it's funny because Matt, our general counsel, we started this Institute of Law and Justice, had a number of attorneys from the DOJ, from Ivy League institutions want to be part of it. Some are. Who applied, and Matt said something like, this isn't the job where in 3 months you're wondering what you're supposed to be doing. Like, you're gonna start and kind of know where, know your place, have your assignments, and have maybe a slow week or two, and then drinking from a fire hydrant like 3 weeks in. And that's exactly what's happened, because we're so unfortunately overwhelmed with legal cases. So pray for that. Pray for free speech. Gosh, the next thing, this angers. I understand how people hate us, Steve, because we're controversial and we're in the street, and I'm fine with that. That's what we've signed up for, right? But these attacks on the pregnancy resource centers, please pray for the pregnancy resource centers. I don't understand why they are so hated. And this is recent. This is a result of Roe being overturned. They went and vandalized all these pregnancy resource centers. They're being targeted physically. They're also being targeted legally, with the fake clinics, and trying to people are suing because most pregnancy centers don't get government funding. So don't believe that when you hear it. Some do, and it's at a state level. Okay. So some of these states are trying to ban the funds. Who's that moron? The governor of Pennsylvania removed all the pregnancy centers from the budget. He cut them. I think they were in the Pennsylvania budget for decades. Yeah, it was 30 years, something like that. I did an interview on it. It was like a long time, 30 years. And they've had Democratic governors and pro-abortion governors, but they just didn't gut it. It's like offering free services. It's supported mainly by churches and private citizens. So they gave them a little funding, and they just cut them all out. I don't understand that, Steve.
No, none of it makes any sense, because what is that talking point that we hear? Like, oh, you only care about kids until they're born, and then you've got nothing for them. You only care about the babies. You don't care about the moms. And these pregnancy centers are establishing long-lasting relationships with the women and the families who seek their services. So we're the pro-lifers when the babies are, well, we're right here. Okay, and then they burn
right
us
here,
down
and you spray painted our door.
Yeah. And get you kicked out of the budget. And now, as we've seen this latest attack, it was kind of held back in Colorado a little bit, but not indefinitely. And now California is suing pregnancy centers for fraudulent and misleading information to expectant mothers who go through the abortion pill reversal protocol. So they're going after folks. They're saying that it's dishonest, that it's like fraud is fraud is not a word, Sean, that I would throw around lightly. It's a serious accusation. And Dr. Delgado's got the research showing 64% of the time. And I think the more experience they have in administering the abortion pill reversal protocol, I think that number has gotten better. But almost 2/3 of the time, at least, they're saving the baby. I don't know what's fraudulent or misleading about that. But as Matt Britton says, if these folks are in an industry where they make their money by killing babies, it shouldn't surprise us or even really outrage us that they also lie. And I guess it shouldn't surprise us that they go after pregnancy centers, when pregnancy centers are such an effective deterrent, outnumbering 5-1 abortion facilities in the United States of America. And, the Pennsylvania case, that's sort of an anomaly. Most pregnancy centers are fully funded, not by taxpayer funding or federal grants or anything like that. They're paid for out of the goodness of pro-life Christians' hearts. So it's not even like they can say it's a misuse of tax dollars or something like that. So it's just outrageous. It shows how fanatic abortion supporters are. I often have thought and considered that I can understand how people could be misguided, misled, make some wrong calculations into thinking there might be some cases where you need abortion. They're wrong, but I can understand how you could be mistaken on that. I can't for the life of me believe that a person of goodwill and good intention would want to come after a pregnancy center.
And I don't think they do. I think this is the extreme side of the abortion industry that now holds the megaphone. And this is just one of the many idiotic things that they're promoting. I've spoken at hundreds of pregnancy resource center banquets over the years. They're fundraising banquets, and at least half of them, I meet somebody who supports abortion. And that's just when I meet them. Usually they come up and they say, "Hey, I just wanted to share. I actually support abortion, but I love what they do, and they're actually helping the women. And you gave me a new perspective on a few things in your talk. Thanks."
I had that experience. You might remember I've told this story before about how when I was a brand new 40 Days for Life guy, we're fighting the University of Wisconsin on the late-term abortion plan. And I woke up super early one morning and took a call. And it turns out I was on the air with like this shock jock pro-abortion guy.
It's a great story.
The next time I met him was at the local pregnancy help center fundraising dinner. And I don't know what he was up to, but he's like told me I did a good job. And I don't know if he was on board with all of the teachings of the church, but I had been told by the person who brought him that night that he entered the church because of the church's work with the poor, and that this pregnancy center was sort of one of those facets that he was impressed with. So
the pro-abortion shock jock became Catholic and pro-life.
Yeah, it's like meeting Howard Stern or something like that at your local fundraising dinner.
That's exactly who I'm picturing, is you talking to Howard Stern, who I can't stand. So, okay. So there's that side of it, right? But these women are seeking free help. They're not manipulating them like, if you go into Planned Parenthood, you'll get abducted by aliens. Come over here. They're acting like they're doing that. And then come over here and we're not going to give you anything. It's like, We don't have any diapers. Get lost. Just don't have an abortion. It's not that. They offer real services, and the women going in for it want those services. Traditionally, that has been called choice. So I don't understand attacking them. The Dr. Delgado thing is even more bizarre, and I'll tell you why. Because they're saying abortion reversal doesn't work. That's BS. Now, number one, that's very dangerous for them. That's like saying there's no abortion survivors. It's like, okay, well, now we're going to prove it to you. And you get Sally, and she says, yeah, I took RU46, took the abortion pills. I freaked out. I called Dr. Delgado, and here's my daughter, Lindsay. And we're looking at Lindsay, and she's a kindergartner. And then we look at the state of California and say, y'all are a bunch of morons. And oh, as a bonus, you just realize that abortion kills a baby, because if you reverse the abortion, you get a kindergartner. So that it's a dumb argument from their standpoint. But here's a deeper and I think more comical part of what's happening in California.
I'm ready.
Steve. Oh, I'm surprised you didn't think of this, but this is just I'm like sharing my East Texas roots. Okay. It's freaking California.
Yeah.
They have all these naturalist doctors that just claim to be medical expert that experiment on all sorts of stuff. You know, you don't need you don't need a heart surgery. You need to go in this corner and rub bark on your face and sniff a blueberry. That's gonna heal you. So I'm just like, y'all have all the fruits and nuts and medical freaks on planet Earth, and you're saying Dr. Delgado is some kind of like witchcraft? What?
This is going to get us
after?
This is going to get us more hate mail than the Trump podcast. All the anger you thought was coming is going to come out now. Send your mail to
Look, my father-in-law, as you know, is an NFP OBGYN, right? Refused to prescribe contraception on moral grounds. So he had a lot of Catholics who came and saw him. But Steve, the lobby were the Catholics, like your wife and my wife, and they've got the little kids and they're waiting and they're pregnant again and they want to be pregnant again and they're all excited and they're holding their rosaries and all that. The other part of the waiting room was the naturalists, who are just against all medicine and hormones, and they don't want fake stuff. And so they go to the doctor, who's going to help them with their fertility the natural way, right? So I say that like I love the naturalists, but I'm telling you, we probably will get hate mail. Have you been to their facility in San Diego, by the way?
No, San Diego is the one major American city I haven't been to.
Whoa, okay. It's ugly. You'll hate it, especially in the winter. You'd rather be in Madison, trust me. I went on a streak where I went there like 20 times in like 5 years. It's all for work. People are going to be like, that sounds horrible. No. But it was like 10 times in a row I went, and it was raining. And everybody was like, it never rains here. I put that in the beginning of the end of abortion when I did a tribute to Gene Walensky, our leader there who died years ago. But it was just funny because it never rains in San Diego. But their office is nicer than most high-end medical centers or cancer research centers or whatever. Like, it's legit healthcare. You're not walking through their office going, these are a bunch of freaks. They don't know what they're doing. There's no abortion reversal. It's legit. They have multiple doctors. It's gorgeous. They have a beautiful massive fundraising gala every year. I think Phillip Rivers has spoken there. I think he was on their board or something. I mean, the San Diego Charger quarterback. It's totally legit. And they're picking on him. And yet I know in California, you've got some dude hanging out in the redwoods saying, if you stick a pine cone halfway in your ear, it's gonna cure your cancer. They've got all this stuff going on out there with the natural stuff. And this is who the state of California is going after. That's called bigotry. So it's a good thing to pray for. Pray for all the pregnancy resource centers. We work the closest with them. This is another dumb thing that Republicans refuse to say, is that they should be proud of the fact that not only the Supreme Court's dragging us out of 1973 science, but we have more free resources for women at the local level than the history of our country, because pregnancy resource centers outnumber abortion providers 5-1. So anyways, we love you, naturalists. The next thing to pray for sounds weird, that abortion remains controversial.
Yeah, I think this is one of the big unspoken threats to the pro-life movement and to those that we strive to serve, which is the abortion industry wants nothing more than to make abortion mainstream. That's what we were talking about with the pharmacies before. If it's in a Walgreens, it can't be that weird. It's not like it's in the seedy Planned Parenthood where half the roof is sunken in, but they still call it healthcare. This is they want to. In fact, I think the hardest core abortion supporters would be fine to see abortion leave Planned Parenthood, because they want it in the ordinary doctor's office, and they want it in the hospital, and they want it, wherever actual healthcare is taking place. Because if abortion were healthcare, it would be taking place where healthcare takes place. And so I think that's what they want to see happen. And they want to make it mainstream by getting it into the med schools. And they want to see Planned Parenthood or other abortion providers recognized as regular members of the business community. And as long as abortion remains controversial, that doesn't happen, right? You don't get the people from the Chamber of Commerce coming out for the ribbon cutting ceremony at the new Planned Parenthood very often, because no one wants to be associated with it. It's harder to get the corporate sponsorships or the business sponsorships for the Planned Parenthood fundraising dinners. All of these sorts of things become very difficult as long as abortion remains controversial. And so we need to continue. I think our prayers are certainly a big step toward that, and our community outreach through our public witness is critical. We need to pray that abortion is never tolerated. This is something that I think is the case in many European countries. There's no place where abortion is completely non-controversial, because it kills a child, and in our hearts we all know that. But a society can, to a greater or lesser degree, kind of shove that fact to the back of our mind. So we've got to keep it on the front burner.
Yeah, and the failed I had an abortion t-shirt and abortion's no big deal, all those things that have failed are good. Like, we didn't give them the stigma. The abortion is the stigma, and it still has the stigma. So it's really, really good. I think the overturning of Roe has made it more controversial. So I think we're actually trending in the right direction. And
have you noticed
really...
the media coverage of local vigils is way up this year?
Yeah,
way up.
We're part of them, and that's really good. So
we were out in Madison, Wisconsin kickoff last night, and all three of the major local TV stations were there reporting on the vigil. They weren't reporting on it well, mind you, but there's no such thing as bad publicity. They showed that abortion remains controversial.
Yeah, and people, you don't know, that's just hard to get after you've done 10 years of 40 Days for Life.
Yes.
So it's great. Okay. Pray for healing for those who have suffered through an abortion. One of the most beautiful things about 40 Days for Life, I think, is we're the first people that encounter a woman minutes after she has an abortion. And it's such a beautiful opportunity immediately to show her love, to show her mercy, and to show her that we're not judging her. And that's sadly the only time she believes it. Going in, she doesn't. We're judgmental, we're evil, we don't understand, we've never walked in her shoes. Then she has the abortion and comes out, and we're still the same. We're still offering help. We're not like, well, made your bed, sleep in it. Quite the opposite. We're showing her love and compassion, and it's a very, very good thing. And I think that this should encourage us in our prayer life. When you're out there and you see women come out, it just makes it easier to pray, makes it easier not to think about ourselves. And it's just a wonderful, wonderful, beautiful thing to pray for people who have just had an abortion.
Yeah, I was out one time, and it can be right after the abortion. Sometimes it's well after the fact, but I was out at a 40 Days for Life vigil speaking one time. I got done speaking, and I met a woman who shared with me that when she was a high school student, she was a victim of a sexual assault. That left her pregnant. She had an abortion, and she said it took her a lot longer to find healing after the abortion than it did even from the assault. And sure enough, not long after that abortion, her life just kind of goes into this tailspin. She becomes addicted to hard drugs. She becomes a prostitute. Everything's off the rails. But one thing led to another, and she had a conversion. Beautiful story. And her kids' school, Evangelical Christian School, came out to the 40 Days for Life rally that I spoke at. And she said, they invited me. I said, sure, I'd be happy to go. It wasn't until the night before that vigil that she realized she would be coming to the 40 Days for Life prayer rally in front of the exact same facility where she had the final of what ended up being 3 abortions in her life. And she's crying. There's tears streaming down her face, tears of some pain, tears of some heartache, but there were also tears of joy mixed in there because it was her 2 high school students who were responsible for leading that vigil in praise and worship music. And she was so proud. And I think I was too, because this stuff to me, Sean, sounds like something right out of the scripture. You can kind of imagine like a modern day twist on the gospel, if you will. A drug addicted prostitute aborted 3 of her children, but then her 2 other children brought her back to the same abortion facility, but this time to protect and defend human life. That's as good as it gets.
It's unbelievable. When was that? I forgot about this story.
That was 2015. So it was a while ago, but it's left a big impression on me.
It's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And talk about right out of the gospel and just, it's not the end for you. And that's the hardest thing to convince women of. I've done the worst. I killed my own child. And the devil wants you to stay there for sure. And you, the viewer or the listener, can be the gateway out of that. So it makes 40 Days for Life very, very unique. There's just very few things you can do in life unless you're a doctor that can save someone's life. And there's very few things you can do where you are guaranteed to have the opportunity to offer the mercy of Christ. Because we don't always know what people are going through because we're just running around so busy all the time. But we know exactly what the women leaving in front of us have just gone through. So it's a great way to offer ourselves to be used by our Lord. Okay. The other prayer intention. Hopefully these really help. I think they're very, very good, Steve. And you put these together, but this next one's so crucial. The evils that surround abortion. So the sort of mushroom cloud of these people that are lost and going to Planned Parenthood for sex changes. The sex trafficking that is tied to abortion, prostitution that's tied to abortion, certainly contraception, substance abuse, addiction after an abortion, as you just mentioned. The spiral out of control post-abortion is so common. I would just encourage people, in an ideal world, like if abortion were actually healthcare and didn't kill a baby, you would go and you would have surgery. And it's just the opposite of most surgeries. I have had close family members that were going to die of a heart attack, but they had surgery just in time. I've also had close family members that were going to die of cancer unless they got an immediate operation. And the great outlook on life of those people, right? One of our favorite authors who's been on the podcast, Peter Kreeft, great author. He has a short book that I think he wrote to his kids or grandkids. But the question that he's answering is, how do I become more grateful? And his opening line is, get cancer. Yeah. Great Peter Kreeft line. In that there's so much truth in that. And abortion's the opposite. When you have a health scare, when you need real health care, there's always, if it's successful, right? There's relief at the end. There's this new perspective. There's thank you, Jesus. It's the opposite with abortion. It's the only form of health care. I'm doing quotations for those who just listen to the audio podcast. Healthcare that sends you in a downward spiral and makes you want to do drugs all day. And yet it just gets ignored and promoted as healthcare, which it has to, because it's not. So you got to say it over and over again. Okay. Also, a growing number of people to pray for. Pray for those who persecute us, Steve. They're still out there.
They are still out there. Sean, you'll remember last time you came to Madison, you got to deal with some of these folks. They were out last night at our rally that we had, and they were wilder than ever. They were screaming F the church through bullhorns the entire time. That missed the media seemed to ignore that. It didn't make any of the major stories, but they were unhinged. They try to bring every sort of vulgarity, every sort of filth that they have. I don't want this to scare people away. Madison is a unique city, and even after that rally ends, they're not going to be out the next day or the day after. They brought out they weren't sending us their best people, Sean, but it was a parade of.
Guys, what are we going to chant? F the church. Genius, Billy.
It was a parade of pain because they were doing, I've never seen this before, but just as you'll see, like after the March for Life or at many 40 Days for Life events, you'll have like the post-abortion testimonies. And they were screaming their testimonies through the bullhorn in between rounds of F the church. And it was just, this girl was impregnated by her uncle. This girl now thinks she's a dude, so she is a man who has an opinion on abortion because she's a man with a uterus. It is just a clown car of sadness, just one after another after another. And it was a reminder to me, just like what I said with the politicians, but even more so. There's a time in my life where I would have been very angry at the antics and the things that they were exposing children to, and just the blasphemy that, like, I was worried lightning was going to strike and I was going to be too close to it. I would have been angry about that in the past. All I could feel was sorrow and a desire to pray for them. And I don't know if the prayer is going to have to penetrate an awful lot of walls that have been built. But haven't we seen that all the time through a 40 Days for Life campaign? That's what's so beautiful, where we have 251 different workers that we know of who don't just support abortion on that ideological level. They earn their entire livelihoods off of it. And yet they become pro-life, leave what is very often their family's sole source of income because it's the right thing to do in response to our prayers. We have to pray, no matter how angry these people make us and how nasty and mean they are, we've got to pray for them, because I think they stand one of the best chances to conversion, because pain, if you can help address the pain, you can take away some of the anger, and you can take away some of the reason that they are so devoted to trying to persecute pro-lifers. They don't expect us to be kind. They don't expect compassion in our eyes. And when they see it, it forces them to address questions. Some of them will stuff in the background, but some of them change their lives and their hearts.
They do. And it's completely pain driven. And the workers that you mentioned, I think one of the graces that the workers have is they have a job and they're somewhat reasonable. And so you can always have a shot, I guess, at conversion. Like when Sue Thayer told us the preacher went out and said, it's better to have a millstone tied around your neck and thrown to the bottom of the sea than to hurt one of these little ones. And she went home and like Googled millstone, like how heavy is that? She actually thought about it. She could have just written the guy off as a nut, which I'm sure she did like 80% of her brain. But there were 20% of like, is that true? And she said it on this podcast. Like, is that true? She thought about it. But the abortion supporters have lost their minds. They're crazy. And that's the difference between the workers and the nutty supporters. By the way, the workers don't want the nutty supporters outside their facility with a bullhorn yelling F the church. Any of the workers go to church, but it's just kind of one of those messaging issues.
That wasn't one of the suggestions in the Dale Carnegie How to Win Friends and Influence People. I thought that was in there.
What I love about the F the church thing, and I never thought I would say that sentence out loud, is it's still, with the corruption and the hypocrisy that is Christianity in America in 2023, still have credibility. Like, who are we going to attack? The church, not the pro-lifers, not Donald Trump, not the conservatives or the Republicans, but the church. And I've said that a million times. I don't think I've ever been insulted or persecuted for being pro-life or being a pro-life leader. It is always, in my case, because I'm Catholic. Any like verbal, real attack, online or verbal, it's being Catholic. So this is always highlighted too by the BBC or the Guardian. I think it's the Guardian. They'll interview me and they'll say, and Sean Carney is a Catholic with 8 children. It's like the start of the article. It's like, but it's about some like bill in Parliament. You're like, okay, he also likes pork ribs. It's just these facts about me, but it's always supposed to be insulting that we're Catholic. Okay. Pray for the conversion of your country. No matter where you are, we're not in good shape unless you're in like Croatia that's just so faithful, yet still has abortion. Okay, I'll bring up a Pope Benedict quote, and I'll do my disclaimer for our wonderful Protestant brothers and sisters because I don't want to quote the Pope just to make them angry. But it's a beautiful quote, and Pope Benedict was asked, "What is your greatest fear?" Which could have been anything, heights, I don't know. And he said, "My fear is that the West lives as if God does not exist." And that's very dangerous. I love that quote because it's so true without being accusatory. We're a bunch of pagans, which is essentially the quote. But that we live as if God does not exist is a dangerous path for a culture, and it's a dangerous path for any country. So we need to pray for the conversions of our country. And I think we're actually really good about that as Americans, if I can brag on our own country. I know at Mass, we pray for America every day, every Sunday, and the prayers of the faithful. Our public, prayers is for our country. But I think we're good at saying our country is not in a good place. Our country is headed in the wrong direction. Our country is in decline, that sort of healthy criticism. But we need to pray for the conversion of our countries because we need it. We absolutely need it. Okay, Steve, the last one, appropriately, is fortitude and endurance.
Yes, for ourselves, for our fellow pro-lifers, for the leaders of our local 40 Days for Life campaigns, it is difficult to continue this work, particularly some of the cities that have been doing it for many years. It is difficult. Do you have the same zeal that you did when you first got into it? We need to, but life is life. And there are concerns that take tolls, and we've got a lot of things going on. Everyone has family commitments and job obligations. There's a lot going on. And we need to pray that the Lord keeps our heart broken on this topic of abortion. What's the prayer? Lord, may the things that break your heart break ours too. I think that's a very important prayer, that we continue to have the boldness, the fortitude, the passion to continue to make the sacrifices required to go show up and to pray in front of a place of complete despair. We can't do it without prayer. I think without love, our efforts are the resounding gong. And I think without prayer, they're the same thing. They're going to die out. We're either going to become angry pro-lifer, or we're going to just go home and find something else to do with our time, something that's easier, something that's not as disturbing or as troublesome. And we need to be united in prayer for the sake of this mission. I know I have talked with leaders all over the country who have said we can feel the prayers of other 40 Days for Life campaigns affirming us and giving us strength as we continue on. That's so critical. That's why it wouldn't be as effective if any city could do any 40 Days for Life campaign at any given time in the calendar year. We've got to do them together because there is strength in the unity of the body of Christ, different cultures, different time zones, different countries, different languages, but that one shared language of prayer to God above, that is necessary.
Yeah. And I, like we said at the beginning, to kind of wrap this up, we need focus. We need focus. That's the reason we have the devotional. Which is so well done and covers a lot of this, but I can't encourage people. We didn't intend on pushing the book so much in this podcast, but it's appropriate. And it's just so good. You are going to love this devotional. You can do a little bit every day. It's designed that way. It's short. It's to the point. It's substantive. Every day has a scripture, and it helps you and me overcome the biggest temptation, I think, in our spiritual life, which is, I don't feel like praying. And prayer is great when you want to, and a pain when you don't, but it's required every day. It's like breathing. Whether we feel like breathing or not, we breathe. And prayer has to be just like that we absolutely need it in order to survive.
So many of the heroes of our faith have said that prayer is more efficacious when we don't want to do it. when it's a struggle to do it. It feels sometimes like that dryness in prayer, like, it's not doing anything anyway. It's doing more than we think.
It is. And there's more merit in it. Any of us can do. It's like loving your enemies. We all love our friends, but we need to love our enemies, and we need to pray, especially when we don't want to. It's always a good trick of the devil, and we should just recognize it. I don't feel like praying. Go do it. Go do it. Go do it. Get that out of your head. Okay, as a recap, prayer intentions. Number 1, pharmacies. Number 2, public officials. Number 3, free speech. Number 4, pregnancy help centers. Number 5, that abortion will remain controversial. Number 6, healing for those who have suffered through an abortion. Number 7, the evils that surround abortion. Number 8, those who persecute us. Number 9, conversion of your country, wherever you are. And number 10, pray for fortitude and endurance. So with that, those are your prayer intentions. Thank you, Steve, for your wonderful insight and your supernatural, what did I say earlier?
Mastery.
It's just at the tip of my tongue. Thank you for all of that. And we will see you next week to see, did the Astros make the playoffs? I am not optimistic, and I'm not going to ask the audience to put that on their prayer list because there's other things going on in the world. But we shall see that. And we have a lot coming in the next few weeks. Can't even talk about it. That's how exciting and secretive it is. Can't even talk about it. But big things are coming in October. So be sure to pay attention to our email list, and especially the email list. So thank you, Steve. We will see you next time. Please rate, review, and share this podcast. Happy October.